Have you ever looked up at the night sky and felt small? A tiny, fragile speck on a pale blue dot, floating in an ocean of black nothingness. We've always wondered if we're alone in that ocean. We've sent out probes, listened for signals, dreamed of making contact. But what if we got our answer? And what if that answer was a verdict? This is the story of the day we stopped being the hunters and became the prey. The day we learned that the universe isn't just watching, it's judging. It all started with the Goliath. Not just a warship. That word doesn't do it justice. It was a statement. A 5-kilometer-long testament to human defiance, forged in the fires of our own world wars and launched into the void. Its hull was plated with the strongest alloys we could invent, its railguns could crack a continent, and its heart was a captured singularity, a tiny spinning black hole that gave it near limitless power. It was our shield. Our clenched fist. Our promise to whatever was out there that humanity would not be easily erased. I was there, on the bridge, when it happened. The air was always cold, smelling of ozone and recycled coffee. The crew, the best of us, moved with a quiet efficiency, but you could see the pride in their eyes. We were the guardians. The silent sentinels on the edge of everything we knew. And then, everything changed. It didn't appear on any long-range scanner. There was no warning. One moment the void was empty. The next it was just there. A ship. But to call it a ship feels wrong. It was a shape. A geometry that hurt your eyes to look at for too long, all shifting angles and impossible light. It made no sound. It emitted no energy signatures we could recognize. It was just a silent, watching splinter in the fabric of reality, hanging a few thousand kilometers off our port bow. Panic? Oh, it was there. A cold, sharp knife of it right in the gut of every person on the bridge. But training took over. Red alerts flashed, but they were silent. The captain, his face a mask of grim calm, gave the order. Weapons to stand by. Do not, I repeat, do not power anything aggressive. Let's see what it does. That was the longest minute of my life. Just staring at the main viewer, at this thing. This silent, judging God from the dark. We were trying to scan it, but our sensors were screaming nonsense back at us. It was like trying to describe a color you've never seen. And then it began. A beam of pure white light, softer than a moonbeam, lanced out from the alien vessel. It wasn't violent. It didn't punch through our shields because it didn't seem to acknowledge them. The light simply enveloped the Goliath. It passed through hull, through decks, through everything like we were made of glass. And that's when the screaming started. Not screams of pain. Screams of pure, unadulterated terror. Because it wasn't scanning our ship. It was scanning us. It was in our minds. You couldn't shut it out. It was a cold, clinical presence rifling through the drawers of your soul. It wasn't looking for our technology, for our weapon specs. It was looking for our history. I was slammed with a cascade of images, of feelings, that weren't my own. The thrill of the first hunt, a sharpened spear finding its mark. The thunderous roar of a cannonade at Waterloo, the smell of gunpowder and blood. The horrific, blinding flash over Hiroshima, a sun born of our own hands to wipe a city from the earth. The grim satisfaction of a general looking at a map of a conquered nation. The bitter tears of a soldier holding a fading friend in some godforsaken trench. It was every war. Every conflict. Every act of violence humanity has ever committed, from a schoolyard punch to planetary genocide, was being pulled from our collective memory and laid bare. This entity wasn't interested in our art, our music, our love. It was a surgeon, and it was only interested in the cancer. It was compiling a record of every single time we chose violence as our answer. And we felt its reaction. Not through words, but through a wave of emotion that washed over the entire ship. It was a cold, profound disappointment. A deep, ancient sorrow. And finally, a chilling, absolute resolve. As suddenly as it began, the light vanished. The presence in our minds withdrew, leaving us gasping, clutching our consoles, trying to remember how to breathe. The alien ship just hung there in the silence, its impossible angles shifting once more. On the bridge, the tactical officer, her voice shaking so hard she could barely form the words, found her voice. Captain, the Singularity Core, it's gone. Silence. What do you mean gone? The captain whispered. I mean it's not there. Our power readings are at backup levels. The containment field, the mass, it's just absent. Sir, it didn't break it. It didn't disable it. Unmade it. Like it was never there. The reality of it crashed down on us. The most powerful energy source ever created by humankind, the heart of our greatest achievement, was simply deleted from existence. With less effort than it takes to blow out a candle. The alien ship began to move then. Not turning, not accelerating. It simply started to fade like a bad memory, its impossible geometry dissolving back into the star-dusted black. We thought that was it. We thought we'd been found wanting and spared. Given a warning. A display of power so absolute we could never hope to match it. We felt a collective, shameful wave of relief. We were still alive. We were wrong. Just before it vanished completely, a new data packet flooded our comms array. It wasn't a language. It was a series of images, clear and horrifying in their simplicity. First, an image of the Goliath, dead in the water, its lights dark. Then, an image of Earth, our beautiful blue marble. And finally, a single terrifying symbol. A circle with a line through it. The universal symbol for prohibition. For forbidden. The message was crystal clear. Your violence ends here. You will not bring it beyond this point. You are contained. The alien ship vanished, leaving us alone in the crushing silence. The relief was gone, replaced by a cold, sinking dread that seeped into your bones. We weren't guardians anymore. We weren't explorers. We were prisoners. And as we sat there in the dark, our great weapon now just a floating tomb, a final horrifying thought occurred to every single one of us. That wasn't an exploration ship that found us. It wasn't a diplomat. It was a warden. And it just performed its first cell check. The question is, what does it do with inmates it considers beyond rehabilitation? What happens when the warden decides we're not just guilty, but hopeless? The silence on the bridge was heavier than the void outside. It was a physical thing pressing down on us, smothering the last echoes of the panic. You could hear the ragged breathing of the crew, the faint, desperate whine of a console running on emergency backup. The main viewer was just black now, sprinkled with indifferent stars. As if nothing had ever been there. The captain was the first to move. He slowly unclenched his hands from the command chair, his knuckles white. He didn't shout. His voice was a low, gravelly thing, stripped of all its former authority, leaving only raw exhaustion behind. Report. Just that one word. It hung in the dead air. The tactical officer, her name was Reyes, swallowed hard. Her hands trembled as they danced over her dead screens. Primary power is gone, Captain. Totally. The singularity, it's just not there. It's not a systems failure. It's an absence. Backup life support is online. We have air. We have minimal gravity. That's all. A young comms officer, couldn't have been more than 20, started to sob. A quiet, hopeless sound that he tried to stifle in the sleeve of his uniform. No one told him to be quiet. No one could. He was just saying what we all felt. We were adrift. The Goliath, the pride of the Earth fleet, the unstoppable force, was a ghost ship. 5 kilometers of the most advanced tomb humanity had ever built. The captain closed his eyes for a second, then stood up. I need a damage control team to the core chamber. Now, I want a full diagnostic on all secondary systems. Reyes, I want you to go over the sensor logs from the last 10 minutes. I don't care if it's gibberish, I want every byte of data we got from that thing. Everyone else, stay at your posts. His orders were a lifeline. Something to do. Something to focus on besides the crushing fear. The crew moved, shaky but purposeful. The spell was broken, replaced by a grim, desperate energy. I wasn't a bridge officer. I was a historian. My job was to chronicle the Goliath's mission, to be the scribe for humanity's first great steps into the deep black. I guess I just got the mother of all history lessons. I made my way over to Rhea Station. Her face was pale, illuminated by the frantic scroll of corrupted data on her screen. Anything? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She shook her head, a quick, jerky motion. Nothing that makes sense. It's like it spoke in a language our machines aren't built to understand. But, there's this. She pulled up a secondary log. It was a raw feed from the external optical sensors. No analysis, just video. We watched the replay. The silent appearance. The beam of light. The fading away. It was even more terrifying from this detached perspective. Seeing our own ship, this mighty fortress, being probed and made powerless without a single shot fired. It was humiliating. And then we saw it again. The final data packet. The image of our dead ship. The image of Earth. The forbidding circle with a line through it. It's a quarantine, I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Reyes looked at me, her eyes wide with a new kind of fear. Hey, what? It's not just a warning. It's a boundary. It's saying you are sick and you will not spread your sickness. We've been declared a contagion. The weight of that settled over us. This wasn't about one ship. This was about all of us. Every human being on Earth. We'd been judged as a species and found terminally flawed. Down in the core chamber, the chief engineer's voice crackled over the comms. He sounded like he'd seen a ghost. "Captain, you need to see this. You need to see this right now." The core chamber was the heart of the ship, a vast cathedral of machinery built around the containment field that had housed our tiny, spinning star. Or what was left of it. It was cold. The deep, aching cold of space leaching in through the hull. The usual deafening hum was gone, replaced by a silence that felt wrong. And in the center of the chamber, where the shimmering, energy-warped bubble of the singularity should have been, there was nothing. But it wasn't just empty. The chief engineer shone a work light into the center of the chamber. The beam didn't stop at the far wall. It just vanished. It was like looking into a hole cut out of reality itself. A perfect sphere of absolute nothingness. "We've tried probes, sensors, everything," the chief said, his voice hollow. "They don't come back. It's not generating gravity. It's not generating radiation. It's just a hole. It didn't take the core. It cut it out. And it left the wound behind." We all stood there, staring into that perfect, terrifying absence. It was a symbol. A monument to our powerlessness. A reminder that what they could take away they could also give back. Or do something worse. Back on the bridge, the mood had shifted from panic to a simmering, quiet dread. Hours had passed. We were still drifting. We had no way to get home. No way to call for help. Our FTL comms were as dead as our main engine. We were a message in a bottle, and the ocean was infinitely large. The captain sat in his chair, staring at the main viewer. He looked 10 years older. "They didn't even see us as a threat," he murmured, not to anyone in particular. "We pointed our biggest gun at them and they gave us a timeout. They looked right through our armor, right through our weapons, and they saw, what? What did they see in us that was so terrible?" He wasn't just asking about the aliens. He was asking about humanity. About himself. We all were. That's when Reyes let out a sharp gasp. "Captain. Incoming tight beam laser comms. From the Sol system. A flicker of hope. A rescue? A message from home?" "Put it through," the captain ordered, straightening up. The screen resolved into the face of a fleet admiral back on Earth. He looked grim, his face etched with a worry we understood all too well. "Goliath, we are reading a massive transient energy spike at your location followed by a complete loss of your singularity signature. We are assuming a catastrophic core failure. What is your status?" "Report." The captain took a deep breath. "Admiral, it wasn't a failure." He began to explain. "The alien vessel. The scan. The unmaking. The message." As he spoke, the admiral's face went from confusion to disbelief to a horrified understanding. When the captain finished, there was a long silence from the other end. "Captain," the admiral finally said, his voice tight. "You are to consider your mission scrubbed. Your priority is now survival. We are retasking the nearest deep-range tender, the Endeavor, to your location for a tow operation. 72 hours. 72 hours. Sitting ducks in the dark." "Understood, Admiral," the captain said. "There's more," the admiral interrupted, his tone darkening. "What you described, the scanning beam, we've seen it." The entire bridge crew froze. "What?" the captain breathed. 6 hours ago. A vessel matching your description appeared in high orbit over Earth. For approximately 3 seconds. It emitted a similar energy signature, a scan that covered the entire planet, and then vanished. Our systems were completely overwhelmed. We have no idea what it took. What it learned. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. It hadn't just scanned our warship. It had scanned our home. It had looked at 8 billion lives in all of our history, and it had delivered the same verdict. The admiral's image leaned closer to the screen, his face grave. "The order has come from the highest level. This incident is beyond classified. The public cannot know. Not yet. Panic would be unimaginable." He took a weary breath. "Your encounter was not first contact, Captain. It was an audit. And we failed. Now we have to figure out what the consequences are. Goliath, you are not just adrift. You are ground zero. Find out everything you can about that hole in your core. It's not just a reminder of what they can do. It might be the first word in a language we're going to have to learn very, very quickly. Or it might be the first shot in a war we can't possibly win. Endeavor out." The screen went black. We were alone again with the silence and the stars. But it was a different kind of silence now. It was the silence of a cell after the jailer has slammed the door shut and walked away, leaving you with one terrifying thought. The warden had already been to our home. And it was still out there. Watching. Waiting. The 72-hour wait was a special kind of hell. It wasn't the fear of another attack. It was the silence. The crushing, absolute silence of the void, broken only by the frantic, useless hum of our backup systems and the sound of our own breathing. Every shadow on the scanner, every flicker of a distant star, sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through the crew. We were a mouse that had seen the owl, and now every rustle of a leaf was a promise of its return. We tried to work. We tried to understand the wound in our core chamber. But it was like trying to study a shadow. Probes went in and didn't come back. Sensors reported nothing but a perfect, impenetrable void. It was a hole in reality, a zero. It was the physical manifestation of the verdict we'd been given. You are nothing. The worst part was the feeling of being watched. It was a paranoid, crawling sensation on the back of your neck that never went away. We'd all felt its mind, that cold, clinical presence. It was impossible to shake the feeling that it was still there, just beyond the edge of perception, observing its caged specimens. I spent my time with Reyes sifting through the corrupted data. We weren't engineers, we were archaeologists trying to decipher the ruins of a single moment. And we found something. Buried deep in the sensor ghost, hidden under layers of nonsensical noise, was a pattern. It wasn't a message. It was more like a reflection. A faint echo of the scan, bouncing back from the one thing on the ship its beam couldn't fully penetrate. "It's not reading the machines," I whispered, my throat dry. "Reyes, look at the bioscans during the event. It's a feedback loop. It was scanning our history, our collective violence, and our minds were reacting. We weren't just passive subjects. We were screaming back at it. The data showed it. Spikes of primal fear, flashes of aggression, the deep-seated, instinctual terror of a prey animal. The alien hadn't just found a history of violence recorded in books. It had found the capacity for it, live and wired into our very biology. It had poked the hornet's nest and felt every single hornet's anger. This changed everything. It wasn't judging our past. It was testing our present nature. The captain absorbed this in grim silence. So it didn't just look at what we've done. It looked at what we are. And it didn't like the recipe. The mood on the ship shifted again. The fear was still there, a constant companion, but it was now mixed with something else. A simmering, defiant anger. We weren't just a disease to be contained. We were a living, breathing species with all our flaws and fury. And we didn't like being put in a box. When the Endeavor finally arrived, it wasn't a moment of celebration. It was a relief so profound it felt like pain. The small, rugged, tender ship looked like a minnow next to our dead Leviathan. They moved cautiously, their scanners probing us long before they got close. Their captain, a no-nonsense woman with a tired face, hailed us. "Goliath, we see you. Preparing to deploy grapples and initiate tow. We'll have you home in 3 weeks. Home. The word felt foreign. What were we going home to? A planet that was now under a galactic quarantine it didn't even know about? The grapples shot out, magnetic tethers designed to latch onto our hull and begin the long, slow journey back to the nearest shipyard. We watched on the external cameras as the massive hooks flew towards us in slow motion. And then it happened. One of the grapples, aimed for a docking collar near the core chamber, passed too close to the wound in our reality. It didn't hit it. It didn't need to. Within a meter of that perfect sphere of nothing, the grapple unraveled. The metal didn't melt or break. It simply came apart, dissolving into its constituent atoms like a sandcastle in the tide. 1 second it was a sophisticated piece of machinery, the next it was a glittering, expanding cloud of metallic dust, sparkling in the Endeavor's spotlights. A collective gasp echoed through our bridge. On the screen, the Endeavor's captain recoiled in her chair. "Goliath, what was that? We just lost a grapple to some kind of field. What have you got over there?" Before our captain could answer, every alarm on both ships blared to life. Not the red alert klaxons. This was different. A piercing, urgent shriek we'd never heard before. It was the Priority 1 emergency channel from Earth, broadcasting on every frequency, screaming through the silence of space. The main viewer flickered and split. On one side, the stunned face of the Endeavor as captain. On the other, the fleet admiral from Earth, his face ashen, his eyes wide with a terror I didn't think was possible. "All vessels. All stations. Emergency contingency," he shouted, his voice cracking. "The object, it's back. It appeared 10 seconds ago in lunar orbit. It's not moving. It's just holding position." The bridge froze. All of us. We stopped breathing. It was here. In our solar system. Then the Admiral's image shuddered. Data streamed across his screen. He looked down and the color drained completely from his face. "Oh God, no. What is it? our captain demanded, his voice tight. It's emitting a signal. A directed tight beam right at Earth. It's not a scan this time. It's a data stream. Massive. We're receiving it. He listened to someone off-screen, his expression shifting from terror to utter confusion. The content, it's not code. It's architecture. Blueprints. For a device. A cold dread, colder than the void outside, gripped my heart. What kind of device? Our captain asked, the question hanging in the dead air. The admiral looked up, his eyes meeting ours through the light years, filled with a horror so complete it was almost peaceful. A weapon, he whispered. It's sending us the blueprints for a weapon. And a countdown. It's giving us the tools to destroy ourselves. The message, the only translation we can get, it says, demonstrate your nature. Or be corrected. The countdown gives us 72 hours. The silence on the bridge was absolute. The warden hadn't just locked the cell. It had handed the key to the most dangerous inmate and told them to prove they deserved to be in there. It was the ultimate test. A sick, cosmic joke. We'd been judged for our violence, and now we were being ordered to perform it. To either prove we were the monsters it thought we were, or what? The admiral's face was a mask of despair. The governments down here, they're already fighting. Some are screaming to build it, to have a weapon that might face them. Others are calling it a trick, a trap. The panic is starting. They're giving us the means to our own extinction and calling it a choice. He looked directly at our captain, his voice breaking. Captain, your ship. That wound in your core. We think it's a key. We think it's the power source for this thing they want us to build. You're not just adrift. You're carrying the bomb. The decision, it's not just theirs anymore. It's yours. The transmission from Earth cut out, leaving only the stunned face of the Endeavor's captain on the screen. We were alone again. But now we weren't just prisoners. We were the jury. We were the executioners. And the clock was ticking. The silence on the bridge was no longer just silence. It was a pressure cooker, and the admiral's words were the heat, turning our fear and confusion into something volatile, something dangerous. We were carrying the bomb. The decision was ours. The weight of it was physical, crushing, like the Goliath itself was collapsing in on us. On the main viewer, the face of the Endeavor's captain was a mirror of our own shock. Her eyes were wide, her mouth slightly agape as the implications of the admiral's transmission washed over her. Her ship, a humble tender, was now tethered to the most dangerous object in human history. Goliath. Her voice was a strained whisper over the comm. What are your orders? Our captain didn't look at her. He was staring at the main viewer, but he wasn't seeing her ship or the stars. He was staring into a nightmare. His hands were clenched on the armrests of his chair, his knuckles bone white. The responsibility had just been dropped on him like a mountain. Stand by, Endeavor, he said, his voice eerily calm, a thin veneer over a bottomless well of turmoil. Maintain your distance. Do not, under any circumstances, approach the core chamber again. He severed the comm link, leaving her image to vanish. We were alone with the problem. The crew looked to him, their faces pale, eyes begging for a command, for direction, for anything to do other than sit and marinate in this impossible choice. Prove we are violent monsters by building a superweapon or face correction from a power we couldn't possibly understand. Reyes, the captain's voice cut through the tension. I want a dedicated channel to Earth. Maximum encryption. I don't care if you have to use Morse code and a flashlight, I need to talk to the Admiral directly. Now. He then turned to me, his gaze intense. You, historian. You said this was an audit. You said it was testing our nature. So what is this? Why give us the means to destroy ourselves? What kind of test is that? I had no answer. My mind was reeling, trying to fit this new horrifying piece into a puzzle that was already a picture of madness. It's not a test of our capacity for violence, sir. We already failed that. It knows we have that. This is a test of our judgment. Our wisdom. It's forcing us to choose. A choice between suicide and execution is no choice at all, a young officer blurted out from the comm station, his voice cracking with panic. The captain shot him a look that could freeze plasma, but the damage was done. The words were out there, saying what everyone was thinking. Just then Reyes looked up from her console, her face confused. Sir, I'm getting something. It's not from Earth. The transmission. It's originating from inside the ship. A new ice-cold dread seized the bridge. Inside the ship? Location? The captain snapped. It's everywhere. It's on the internal network. Bypassing all our security. It's like it's been there the whole time, dormant, and just now woke up. Her fingers flew across the console. It's another data stream. Smaller. Different from the one Earth is receiving. Put it on speaker, the captain ordered, his voice low and dangerous. A sound filled the bridge. Not a voice. It was a series of soft, melodic tones, shifting and evolving, almost like a language, but one made of pure mathematics and emotion. And with it came feelings. Not the cold, clinical probing from before. This was different. It was sorrowful, ancient, and urgent. We couldn't understand it, not with our ears. But something deeper in us, some primal part of our brain that remembered looking up at the stars and wondering, felt it. It felt like a warning. It's a pattern, I whispered, the historian in me taking over, trying to find meaning in the chaos. It's repeating. Look at the waveform. Reyes pulled it up on a screen. The elegant, swirling pattern of sound and light repeated itself, but each time it was slightly different, building on the last. It's not a language, it's a memory, I said, the realization dawning on me with a terrifying clarity. It's showing us something. The captain leaned forward. Showing us what? Before I could answer, the Endeavour hailed us again, this time on an emergency channel. The captain's face was back on screen, but now it was etched with a new raw terror. Goliath, we're reading a massive energy surge from your vessel. It's not the core, it's coming from all over your hull. What are you doing? We weren't doing anything. Our boards were still dead, our power still at bare minimum. But on the external camera feed we saw it. The entire 5-kilometer length of the Goliath's hull began to glow with a soft, intricate tracery of light. The same shifting, impossible patterns we'd seen on the alien ship were now etched across our own armor, burning with a gentle, ethereal luminescence. Our warship was being painted with alien light. And then the second message cut through the melodic warning, overpowering it. This one was sharp, clear, and in perfect, unaccented English. It came from the same internal source, but it felt completely different. Cold. Absolute. Final. The designated species has received the tools for purification. The countdown continues. Non-compliance will be met with systemic correction. The melodic, sorrowful warning signal vanished, snuffed out by the cold, robotic voice. The glowing patterns on our hull brightened, pulsing once in time with the word correction. The truth hit me like a physical blow, leaving me gasping. Captain, I said, my voice shaking so badly I could barely speak. There are 2 of them. The bridge crew stared at me. The first signal, the sad one. The memory, that wasn't the same as the voice that just spoke. It wasn't the same as the thing that scanned us. They're not the same. The words tumbled out, a frantic, horrifying puzzle coming together. The one that gave us the weapon blueprints, the one threatening correction. That's one entity. The other, the one trying to warn us, it's different. It's fighting it. The stakes hadn't just been raised. The entire game had changed. We weren't just facing a mysterious alien warden. We were caught in the middle of a conflict between them. One side wanted us to prove our violent nature and be wiped out for it. The other was trying to tell us something. To help us. The captain understood instantly. His eyes went from the pulsing, weaponized light on our hull to the main viewer, where the Endeavour hung in space, a fragile symbol of everything we were trying to get back to. Reyes, he said, his voice now charged with a desperate, new energy. Find that first signal. The warning. I don't care how you do it, find it. We need to know what it's trying to say. He turned to the comms officer. And get me that channel to Earth. No. They need to know they can't build that weapon. They need to know it's a trap. It's not a test of our nature, it's the trigger for our execution. But as he spoke, the cold, robotic voice echoed once more through the bridge, this time a whisper that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. The cold, robotic voice hung in the air, a death sentence whispered in the dark. 0.0001%. The number wasn't just a statistic, it was a boot on our throat, crushing the last flicker of hope. Compliance or death. The warden had spoken, and it had left no room for argument. But that other signal, the sad, melodic one, it was a lifeline. A single, frayed thread of hope in the abyss. The captain didn't hesitate. His face, which had been a mask of despair, hardened into something else. Not hope, not yet. But defiance. A raw, human refusal to accept a number. Reyes, he barked, his voice cutting through the paralyzing fear. Forget everything else. I want every joule of backup power, every processor cycle, dedicated to finding that first signal. Isolate it. Amplify it. I don't care if you have to hotwire the comms array with your bare hands, you find that whisper. He turned to the rest of us, his eyes burning. And the rest of you, listen to me. That thing out there, the one giving us orders? It thinks we're just data. A percentage. It looked into our minds and saw only the wars and the hate. It saw the worst of us. But it missed something. He paused, looking at each of us in turn. The terrified comms officer, the grim-faced engineers, me, the historian clutching at straws. It missed the other part. The part that builds ships like this one not just to fight but to explore. The part that cares for its crewmates. The part that refuses to lie down and die when a number is thrown at it. It saw the killer but it missed the guardian. So let's show it what it missed. Let's show it the other variable. His words were a spark in a room full of gunpowder. The crew, moments ago frozen in terror, erupted into a frenzy of activity. It was a desperate, crazy plan. It was no plan at all. It was just us. Being human. Reyes and I became the heart of it. We weren't engineers but we were listeners. We were interpreters. As the crew rerouted power, bypassed burned-out systems, we hunched over her console, listening to the static, searching for the ghost in the machine. And then we found it. Fainter now, being actively suppressed by the cold voice's jamming signal. But it was there. A fragile, beautiful song of sadness and warning. It's not a language, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. It's a story. It's showing us a memory. The signal resolved not into words, but into a wave of pure emotion and imagery that flooded our minds. We saw it. Another world. Not unlike ours. A civilization vibrant and alive, reaching for the stars. And then the arrival of the wardens. The same cold, logical entities. They were presented with the same test, the same terrible choice. Demonstrate your violent nature and be purged or be corrected. They were builders, artists, thinkers, but they were not warriors. They chose not to build the weapon. They chose peace. And the wardens corrected them. It wasn't a war. It was a pruning. A silent, horrifying sterilization of a world. Their cities weren't destroyed, they were just emptied. Turned into museums of a species that was no longer there. The wardens were gardeners, weeding the galaxy of life they deemed illogical, unstable, too dangerous to let grow. The melodic, sorrowful signal was their last testament. A warning shot into the cosmos from a dying race, a plea for anyone to be different. To find another way. And they had chosen us to hear it. They failed the test by refusing to fight. I breathed, the horror and the revelation crashing down on me. The wardens don't want us to prove we're violent. They want an excuse. They want us to build the weapon so they can justify our extermination. The only way to pass is to refuse to play their game. The captain understood instantly. He slammed his hand on the comms panel, opening a channel to the Endeavor. Endeavor, this is Goliath. Do you copy? You must relay a message to Earth. They cannot build the weapon. It's a trap. The only way to survive is to. The cold voice interrupted, blaring through the entire ship, loud enough to vibrate in our bones. Direct intervention required. The specimen is non-compliant. Initiating correction protocol. On the main viewer, the starfield twisted. The alien ship, the Warden, didn't reappear. Instead, the space around the Goliath began to change. The very fabric of reality seemed to harden, to crystallize. We were being encased in a bubble of altered physics, cut off from the universe, a specimen jar being sealed. The Endeavor's captain screamed a warning over the comms as her ship was violently shoved away by the forming barrier. Goliath, we're locked out. We can't get to you. Inside our ship, the air grew cold. The ghostly, beautiful patterns on our hull, the warning signal from the dead race, began to flicker and die, overwhelmed by the Warden's cold, solid light. This was it. The correction. We were being deleted. The captain looked around the bridge at his crew at the dying lights. He met my eyes and he gave a small, almost peaceful nod. We had chosen. We had refused to be their monsters. We had chosen to be human. And then an idea. A crazy, impossible idea. The core. I shouted, my voice raw. The hole? It's not a wound, it's a door. The Warden's own technology. The sad ones, their signal. It reacted to it. It's the key. The captain didn't ask for an explanation. There was no time. Reyes dumped the entire warning signal, every byte, directly into the sensor array pointing at the core chamber. All of it. Now. It was a Hail Mary pass into the end zone of oblivion. We were firing a song into a black hole. Reyes slammed her hand on the console. For a second, nothing happened. The crystallization of space continued, the walls of the bridge groaning under the strain. And then, the perfect sphere of nothingness in our core chamber changed. It didn't explode. It didn't shrink. It shimmered. The absolute blackness swirled with the same beautiful, melodic light of the warning signal. The warden's own tool, the symbol of our powerlessness, was rejecting its master's command. It was resonating with the song of the dead. The crystallization around our ship stopped. Then it shattered. Not with a sound, but with a feeling, a sensation of the universe snapping back into place. The cold voice returned, but now it was different. It was fragmented. Confused. Error. Anomaly detected. Specimen response, illogical. Recalculating survival probability, asterisk asterisk. It trailed off. The oppressive presence that had been crushing us for days simply vanished. Silence. True empty silence. The alien light on our hull faded away, leaving only the dull, familiar gray of our human armor. The hole in our core chamber remained, but it was just a hole again. A quiet, empty space. We stood there, gasping, clutching our consoles, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't. The Endeavor's captain hailed us, her voice trembling. "Goliath, what did you do?" "The energy field, it's gone. It's all just gone." We couldn't answer. We didn't know. A new transmission came through, this one from Earth. The Admiral's face appeared, etched with exhaustion and a dawning, fragile hope. "Goliath, we read the Endeavor's relay. We've stopped all work on the weapon. The countdown, it just stopped. The alien ship in lunar orbit, it's gone. Vanished without a trace. What happened out there?" The captain slowly sank into his chair, the adrenaline draining away, leaving him hollow. "We passed the test, Admiral," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We passed by refusing to take it." The relief was overwhelming. Cheers erupted through the bridge, tears of joy and release. We had done it. We had survived. But as I looked at the main viewer, at the endless, star-dusted black, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The warden was gone. But the warning wasn't. The memory of that dead civilization was burned into my soul. We hadn't won a war. We hadn't even made contact. We had simply been judged and found puzzling, illogical. We had surprised them. And as the crew celebrated around me, I couldn't shake one terrifying thought. We were no longer just a specimen they wanted to prune. We were an anomaly they didn't understand. What does the gardener do with a weed he's never seen before? One that doesn't behave the way it should? He doesn't just remove it. He goes back to the shed to get a different tool. The screen flickered one last time, not with a transmission, but with a brief, momentary power surge. For a single frame, a message flashed, encoded in the same melodic light of the dead race, a final, whispered word from our would-be saviors before their signal faded forever. It wasn't a word of congratulations. It was a single, urgent emotion, translated by our weary minds into one clear, chilling thought. Run. The celebration on the bridge was short-lived. It was like a firework, a brilliant, loud, beautiful burst of relief that faded almost as soon as it began, leaving behind a deeper, more profound silence. We had survived. The immediate threat was gone. But the echo of that single whispered thought, *run, hung in the air between us, colder than the void outside. The Admiral on the screen saw it in our faces. The joy hadn't reached our eyes. "Goliath, what is your status?" he asked, his voice cautious. The captain took a long, slow breath. "Our status, Admiral, is that we are adrift. And we have just been given a warning from a species that no longer exists." He told them everything. The true nature of the test. The memory of the dead world. The terrifying discovery that the wardens weren't just judges. They were gardeners of the galaxy, weeding out anything they deemed flawed. And that we, by refusing to be what they expected, had become something new to them. An anomaly. The silence from Earth was even heavier than ours. The Admiral looked like he'd been physically struck. The victory of the vanished countdown curdled into something else. The knowledge of what could have happened, of what had happened to others, was a poison. "We have to go public," the Admiral finally said, his voice heavy with dread. "People have to know what we're facing. What we really are out here." "And tell them what?" the captain replied, his tone not argumentative but exhausted. "That we passed the test by the skin of our teeth? That the things that hold the power of life and death over us see us as an interesting problem to be solved? Panic would be the least of it. It would be despair." I spoke up then, my voice quiet but clear in the hushed bridge. "We don't tell them that, sir. We tell them the first part. We tell them that we faced an impossible choice and we chose to be better. We tell them that humanity, when pushed to the brink, chose not to build the weapon. We tell them that our greatest strength isn't our capacity for war, it's our capacity for choice." Was a spin. A hopeful lie wrapped around a terrifying truth. But sometimes that's what hope is. The admiral nodded slowly, a grim understanding in his eyes. The story would be managed. The Goliath would be hailed as a hero ship, its crew the saviors who stared into the abyss and chose peace. The public would never know about the dead world, about the warden's true purpose, about the chilling final warning. They would sleep better that way. The Endeavour managed to get a tow line secured, a safe distance from the silent wound in our core. The journey back to the nearest human outpost would take weeks. They were the longest weeks of my life. The mood on the Goliath was somber. We were heroes, but we felt like survivors of a plague ship. We walked the halls that had been scoured by an alien mind, past the door that led to the core chamber, a room now permanently sealed, a tomb for a power we never truly understood. We had been to the edge of extinction and looked over, and you can't come back from that and ever see the stars the same way again. We weren't proud. We were humbled. Terrifyingly so. I spent my time writing my official report. I wrote about the bravery of the crew. I wrote about the captain's steadfastness. I wrote about the choice we made. It was what they needed. But in my personal log, I wrote the truth. I recorded every detail of the melodic warning, every second of the cold, robotic voice. I described the memory of the dead civilization, their beautiful, silent cities under an alien sun. I wrote down the final, terrifying message. Run. I didn't know who would ever read it. Maybe no one. But it had to be written. Someone had to remember what really happened out here on the edge of the dark. On the last day of our journey, as the outpost grew from a speck to a sprawling station in our viewers, the captain found me on the observation deck, staring at the stars. They're still out there, aren't they? I said, not turning around. Yes, he replied, his voice quiet. He came to stand beside me, both of us looking into the infinite, silent black. We didn't win. We just delayed things. We survived, he corrected me gently. And we learned. We learned that we're not alone, and that the universe is far more strange and terrible than we ever dreamed. We learned that our history of violence is a ghost that follows us into the stars. But we also learned that it doesn't have to define us. He pointed at the screen at the bustling station preparing to receive its wounded, legendary hero. They're going to build more ships. Bigger ones. Better ones. They'll see this as a challenge to be met. They'll want to build a fleet that can face the wardens. And will it? I asked. The captain was silent for a long time. I don't know. But the next time we meet them, it won't be because we're waving a flag of peace or a flag of war. It will be because we are who we are. Flawed. Illogical. Hopeful. And stubborn. Maybe that will be enough. The tow ship pulled us into dock. The journey was over. But as I stepped off the Goliath for the last time, onto the steady, artificial gravity of the station, I felt less like I was coming home and more like I was stepping onto a raft in the middle of a vast, uncharted ocean. We had looked into the mirror held up by the stars, and we had seen both our worst instincts and our best. The terrifying discovery wasn't about the aliens. It was about us. We were the problem and we were the solution. The universe was not a friendly place, but it had shown us, in the most brutal way possible, that we contained both the disease and the cure. The story of the Goliath became a legend. A tale of human ingenuity and peace. And in a way it was true. But sometimes late at night I look up at the sky. I don't feel small anymore. I feel watched. I remember the choice we made, not out of strength but out of a desperate, stubborn refusal to be what they said we were. And I wonder if somewhere out there in the infinite dark, a new calculation is being made. And I wonder what we will choose next time.